Seahawks Price for Friday, September 20th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you've got your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Seahawks Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Seahawks with Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you, including our daily poll question. Today we're asking, after hearing from Thatcher Demko yesterday, what is your bigger concern heading into the season? Defense or goaltending? You can vote at the Seahawks Price X and YouTube channels. And it's funny, Blake, if I could have a do-over on a poll, we might add Elias Pettersson as well, and whether he can bounce back from what was a miserable second half to last season. We will hear from Elias Pettersson shortly. He met the media in Penticton at the South Okanagan Event Center. Plenty to unpack there, but of course, plenty going on as day 2 of training camp is underway, building towards Sunday scrimmage, and of course, a busy slate of preseason games that gets going Tuesday. So, to help us out here and give us some eyes and ears on the site, he is the editor-in-chief of Canucksarmy and the Nation Network, of course, the host of Canucks Conversation. Let's bring in David Quadrelli from the South Okanagan Event Center, who's overlooking proceedings. David, how are you?
Great, gentlemen. How are you?
We're keeping people on their toes. We've never done this before. Live guest right off the top of the show. It's just a sign of how
special.
Yes,
how special he is.
Yes, how special you are and how malleable we are. These Group A is actually, they're going out of order. Group A is second on the ice. They're out there right now. And just give us a lowdown. The scene set here as day 2 begins.
Yeah, so I mean, right now, the thing that stands out to me the most, and of course, we're going to talk line combos. I'm sure you guys have already done it. They're not going to be different from yesterday. The thing that stands out to me, that has stood out for the first few days, is just how similar Marco Terenius is with his goaltenders as Ian Clark is. Like, I'm watching Arturs Silovs do drills that he's done for years under Ian, right? And of course, Marco also coached Arturs in Abbotsford last year. So it's just this familiarity. Like, it's literally like, of course, we're all wishing Ian well and he's not on the ice, but like, I'm looking at it and it just looks the same. Like, they're doing everything in the exact same order. Like, nothing's really changed. So yes, there's a new goaltending coach, but nothing, at least on ice, seems to have changed, which I think is a really good sign if you look at how the Canucks goaltending has been over the past few years. As for lines, like what I'm seeing with Group A, again, yesterday it was a lot of rush stuff. We saw Jake DeBrusk skating with Elias Pettersson and Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Couldn't pronounce Lekkerimäki, so he said that kid is pretty darn good, and that shot's pretty darn good, and it's absolutely true. Like, Jonathan Lekkerimäki has a bomb of a shot. You can't help but notice it, right? So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Group A. Today is a lot more 5-on-5 stuff, a lot more battles. So that's what I'm going to be really interested to see. How does Lekkerimäki withstand all of that, right? And it's very interesting to kind of see how he stacks up against that. Those bigger guys. Like, even just to give you guys another example, like Arshdeep Bains yesterday, battling hard with Vincent Desharnais, right? Like, that's a big body to go up against, and he did it pretty admirably. Desharnais bodied him a few times, but today, again, those two back at it. Bains looked a little more well prepared for what was coming at him when
Matt,
Desharnais was
we talked about this going into I think the day before day 1. We're like, can somebody just recognize that there is some upward mobility available here and actually give performances? So it sounds like you're starting to see some hungry guys give performances, Matt. We've been disappointed by that in years gone by. So
yeah, I mean, like, the stories, it's funny because I always say this, like, the stories from training camp, it's hard to have hard takeaways from like the first day. Not under Travis Green. It's okay, who's out of shape? We got to find out right away. Who's in Group C? There's your story. Jake Virtanen's story every year, skating in Group C. Ollie Levy collapsed in the corner, all these different things that we've had. Tocchet saying, I'm not going to kill them. We're not going to do that this year. So it was a lot of teaching yesterday, a lot of rush stuff. So again, are you finishing rush chances? Hard to get takes on goaltenders, I suppose, because it was all like 3-on-0s yesterday. But today there was a lot more 5-on-5 work. And that's when you're really starting to see some more of those battles.
On goaltending, David, that you mentioned, did you come away more or less encouraged from Demko's media session yesterday? in terms of his season outlook?
Well, less, because if it was an injury that he said, yeah, so this is something that a lot of people have dealt with, and that's why we have this timeline. Of course, you're more encouraged. Am I more encouraged? It's hard to say specifically, because what did I want Thatcher to do, right? Like, I understand why there's no timeline. Like, I understand why he's coming out and saying, like, he was honest. I don't think there was anything being withheld. And I mean, the thing that, people on Twitter have been saying to me is like, well, he didn't specify which muscle it was that he's hurt. And I understand that, but the thing that I kept coming back to, because I am curious, so I was looking it up and I'm like trying to figure it out, but I was like, what's the best case scenario? Like, if I figure this out, if I figure out what muscle is ailing him, if all the top doctors all around the world can't figure this, what the hell am I going to do from the South Okanagan Events Center? What am I going to be able to Google and try and figure out? You're not going to learn a timeline if you figure out what muscle it is, because if there was one, they would have one. What I can say, though, is yesterday and today, he was back out on the ice. Some really encouraging signs, guys. Like, again, yesterday I posted the videos. I was watching him warm up and he's just skating back and forth. I was like, is this all he can do? Because he's months away if that's all he can do. And like, them giving the update that he is skating, they were using that very literally, because he was just skating back and forth. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's months away. But then I saw him in the crease after. And again, no RVH. Like, that's the last step, right? Like, that's the stance that gave him trouble and gave him the injury, was dropping into that hard RVH against the post. He's not there yet, and that's ultimately, like, that's the next step in recovery. Is when I'm watching these sessions, that's what I'm looking for, is, okay, when can you start hitting your post integration? How hard are you hitting it, right? Like, how much are you going into it? Are you popping out of it? Like, that's the stuff that's putting a lot of strain on the knees and putting strain on Demko specifically with this injury, I believe. So when I watch him warm up, again, there's side to side movement. He's looking really good on all that. That's a major step. But again, that kind of, I don't want to say last hurdle, because there might be stuff after that for comfort, but the next, I guess, milestone for him in his recovery that I'm watching for when I see him on the ice, and it's great he's on the ice, is that RVH.
David, you mentioned Lekkerimäki skating with Patterson and DeBrusk, and I think it would be an extraordinary turn if Lekkerimäki is there on opening night. I'm not sure that's to be expected, maybe somewhere down the road. But speaking of extraordinary, a statement yesterday from Rick Tocchet that caught my ear, that Conor Garland can play anywhere. He meshes with everyone. Like, David, I remember 2 years ago when we were sitting here when he was struggling, right, and couldn't be traded, and we were sitting there going,
can he be played with?
He's an orthodox player to play with. He zigs when others zag, blah, blah, blah. Who can actually play with this guy? Do you think we have a clue there, particularly since Dakota Joshua is sidelined as he recovers from cancer surgery? Do you think we have a little bit of a clue there that the right shot Garland might actually be the guy who starts with Patterson and DeBrusk?
Who's it going to be, guys? Like, who's it going to be? It's either going to be him or Daniel Sprong, right? Like, in my mind, those are the two guys. And ultimately, you're starting Lekkerimäki there because, hey, you're giving the kid a shot. He played really well at Young Stars, and Tocchet said it yesterday. We want to see how he does but with these top players. How does he play? How does he look? And I'll remind you, Linus Karlsson started there last year, right? And when there was injuries, Linus Karlsson got a game or two with Elias Pettersson. So again, I look at it like that, like they're trying to figure this out. And yes, Matt, you're absolutely right. It would be a long shot for this kid to make the opening night roster. That's not even a slight against him. It's just that it makes more sense for him to go to the AHL. You're not going to harm his development by being in the AHL. And unless he's ready to be a top 6 guy, he's probably not making this roster. So yeah, like, I look at Conor Garland and say, again, opening night, guys, you look at the opening night lineup of last year, Conor Garland was with Elias Pettersson. If you recall, there was that alley-oop pass from Patterson on night 1 of the regular season. Tocchet's comments yesterday, absolutely, I think that's the front runner. I am a big fan of Daniel Sprong. That's one thing that stood out to me that I will tell you, even through the summer skates out at UBC a couple weeks ago when I was there, and then early on in camp here, his shot is lethal. Harmon pushes back on me when I say it might be the best on the team, but it is quick, it is deceptive, it is very hard. And we all know the problem with Daniel Sprong is not his shot, but I have been impressed with his shot nonetheless. So again, can he earn that spot to get to that wing spot with Elias Pettersson? I'm not sure. I would say right now the early favorite is Conor Garland, certainly.
You talked about Jake DeBrusk's report card on Lekkerimäki. How about Jake DeBrusk's report card because we've heard he's got a decent shot too, which is good. Like, nobody's going to be Alex Ovechkin here, but if we're talking about a bunch of Canucks that have good shots, this hope that a bunch of guys can maybe get to career highs or find new career highs statistically, I mean, maybe it's possible.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like in free agency, they went out and got a bunch of volume shooters. Like everybody they got, Heinen, Sherwood, all these guys, they shoot the puck a ton. They generate off the rush. And again, when we talk about what's actually happening here at training camp, there was a lot of work yesterday on like rush offense. How are we doing that? How are we breaking the puck out of our zone and getting up the ice in a hurry? How are we doing that? So there was a lot of work on that yesterday. I liked what I saw from Jake DeBrusk, and I wrote about it over at Canucksarmy, but he talked about being nervous and saying like this guy's only been with the Bruins his entire career. This is his first training camp with a team that isn't the Boston Bruins. So he did say there was some nerves, and he had a couple self-deprecating jokes about his performance in there, but he didn't stand out in a negative way, certainly in my eyes. So again, this is a guy who shoots the puck a ton. He can shoot and he can get it off in tight. And again, a guy that reminds me of that is Bo Horvat, right? From that bumper spot on the power play, how quickly he could get the puck over a goaltender's shoulder. I really want to see that from Jake DeBrusk. They're not doing power play work till Saturday, so tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see on that, I suppose, of where DeBrusk kind of slots into Rick Tocchet's power play plans. But I did like what I saw from DeBrusk on day one for sure.
We're going to play some clips here in a moment. He didn't sound most cheery, but we weren't there to check out all the body language and everything. What have you made of Elias Pettersson and his demeanor here since yesterday's media session, and how's he looked on the ice?
Yeah, it's like he was asked a question about his personal life, right? And he did say like, he's certainly more guarded is what I'm getting at. He's more guarded with the media. He's always been a very thoughtful guy, always really cares about what he's saying. Like sometimes we'll just stop himself in the middle of an answer and say, I'm going to try that again. I'm going to redo that. And then he just redoes his answer. So again, he's always been like that. His demeanor, like, and body language, it was fine. Like, I think it was fine because he's guarded with the media, but then as soon as the cameras are off, he's himself. You can tell that he's still the same guy. And I look at what Tocchet said. I look at what Alvin said about, his attitude right now and just how much more relaxed he seems. I think that was the word that Tocchet used. And I look at that. I look at, he looks good on the ice again, one day, but he looks good on the ice. And I just think this is the guy we're going to get. Is just, he's going to be a little more guarded with the media. I think the real thing that not troubles me, but the thing that I most picked up on with Elias Pettersson yesterday was just when he was talking about the knee injury, how he said it's a nagging injury that doesn't want to go away, and we figured out a way to work around it. Okay, for how long? Like that's the question that I'm left with, right? Is like when this starts bugging him again.
Yeah.
I just hope, like my personal hope is that now it's at a point where he's able to just say, okay, if this is starting to bug me, I need to shut it down for a week, a month. I don't know what it is, but just say like, how much am I really helping the team if I just keep trying to push through this and I'm not producing like myself? And ultimately I'm a third line center. Like how much does that really help the team? When that's what he's dealing with. So that was my takeaway is if it acts up again, what's the plan of attack?
Just seems like an inevitability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not like the Canucks have depth at center that can accommodate that. Great that Teddy Blueger's back, but he's going to be a few days away, you'd think, and probably deeper into the preseason before we see a good look at him. If Jonathan Lekkerimäki can't make the team, is there a surprise make of the team here? Is somebody young and maybe it's because of the center ice availability here with no Blueger, can somebody fill that void? Or anybody else for that matter? Who comes to mind that could be a surprise add to the team for opening night?
Okay, I'm going to give you one. And it's not, again, surprise that, like, am I predicting that this is going to happen? No. One thing interesting, though, Ratu yesterday, not ahead of Nils Amon on the depth chart, but when it came to groups and when it came to line combinations.
Indiscernible, yeah.
Ratu was ahead of Nils Amon. So is he ahead of him on the depth chart? Probably not. Is it similar to what we're seeing with Lekkerimäki, with Elias Pettersson playing with Filip Hronek, right? Where it's, we're going to give you a shot here. But you've got Max Sasson, who I know this organization's very high on. He had a strong showing at Young Stars. can he be higher than Nilsson? Can he be the guy that, earns a job? Because look, like Nilsson, the organization obviously really likes him. He gets the 2-year contract, but then again, if he goes on waivers, the chances of him being claimed just with the way that the contract's structured with the higher AAV and everything, it's going to discourage a team from putting in a claim on Nilsson. Am I saying Nilsson's going to be on waivers? No, but if someone's going to make the team, it might be Amon, it might be DiGiuseppe that goes down on waivers, but I just look at it and I say, like, there's probably not going to be a surprise, but if there is one, like, Ratu has to be the early favorite right now.
Let's wrap up with our poll question. David, you talked about goaltending. We haven't talked as much about defense, but what's your bigger concern heading into the year? Which position group, goaltending or defense?
I say this as a noted big Arturs Silovs guy, have been for years. It's goaltending. It has to be. And I've said it so many times. I really do want this organization to take a long, hard look at Kevin Lankinen. The thing I said yesterday was the Canucks need Kevin Lankinen, and Kevin Lankinen needs the Canucks. Training camps have opened. Kevin Lankinen isn't playing anywhere. So, again, there might be a waiver claim that you go out and get, but what's a waiver claim really going to do to bolster this? I would feel much better if they had someone that I could be confident and say, if Arturs Silovs, who historically at every level has had ups and downs during regular season play, if that starts to happen, I would love to have a 1B that I'm confident in. And I'll tell you, again, 2 days of camp, these aren't drills that are conducive to making goaltenders look great, but like, I don't think I'm super confident in Jiri Patera being a 1B. Like, could he be a backup? Maybe, but he's not that. He's not an NHL backup at this juncture. He's going to be forced to be as it stands, but 1B, certainly not. Certainly not. So I will say goaltending. Goaltending because I also just look at the defense just to kind of weigh the other side of it and say, like, defense isn't just blue liners. It's team defense. And I'm confident in the Canucks team defense, right?
Yep.
So I just look at all those things and I say goaltending.
Yep. No, I'm 100% with you. I think you're spot on Lankinen. Great turn of phrase. David, thanks so much for taking time to join us. Let them know what you guys got going on over the course of the weekend. I've seen Canucksarmy's got a live blog happening, and of course, the big scrimmage on Sunday at the South Okanagan Event Center.
Yeah, daily content. We had 14 articles over at Canucksarmy yesterday. We're probably looking at about 15 today. So lots of content over at Canucksarmy, daily shows on Canucks Conversation. And it's been fun, guys. It's honestly been really fun to just be out here. I got to actually go out last night and go try some pizza at this pizza place in Penticton. It's a beautiful city. I like it.
You go check out our friends at Neighborhood in Yellow Dog.
Yes.
You take good care of Harmon and Jeff driving back on the Coquihalla. We'll be looking.
Maybe try music. Try listening to music whilst you drive. I know it's a radical thought.
Jeff doesn't much like music. He prefers conversation.
Yep. We had good conversation. Yeah,
he's the dean of this reporting group, so Jeff gets his way. And we'll be listening to Canucks Conversation and reading on Canucksarmy. Thanks for this, David. Appreciate it.
Right on, boys. Thanks so much.
That is Quadrelli, the inimitable David Quadrelli, who we adore here. Part of the Nation Network, of course, with Canucks Conversation, and the editor-in-chief of Canucksarmy and the Nation Network on the print side of things. Okay, partner, let's answer the poll question ourselves. Yeah. I'm in lockstep with David. I'm goaltending until there's more certainty with Demko or until Kevin Lankinen is brought in. I'm worrying more about the goaltending than I am the defense.
Okay, let's explore the space with this a little bit. Which is more NHL proven on a nightly basis?
It's the defense by a mile, right?
Yeah, I get the top end for sure, obviously.
Well, there's just very few NHL games between Silovs and Patera.
But is there that many more on the relative scale? Because you expect defensemen to have more games than goaltenders. So it's judged on a different scale. It's not, you don't just compare one game to one game. But Forbort and Juleson, Forbort and Desharnais, that's a full pairing that isn't like everyday NHLer for the past 5 years. We're not talking about that.
No.
That's a full pairing.
I would say two things. Number one, I would agree with Quadrelli that when we say defense, we're not just talking about defensemen, but team defense, where the Canucks were extraordinary last year. And I guess I just have a little bit more, and this is a theme that's emerging on the show. I have a little more confidence in Desharnais and Juleson than you do. Like we're probably in lockstep on Forbert, but the two right side guys I think are a little higher up the food chain than you might.
The correct answer I think is goaltending. I'm playing devil's advocate here,
Yep.
but I think it's by a not slim margin, but it's a slimmer margin than I think a lot of people probably believe in their own minds. I saw a lot of feedback from our listeners and viewers that you guys or Blake in particular, you're going to look like an idiot about the Desharnais take. My Desharnais take was, hey, I'm not confident, but I remain to be corrected here. And if he turns into like a with a bullet sixth defenseman, even a fifth defenseman under the tutelage of Adam Foote and Rick Tocchet and company, then great. And my, oh my, what would that say about the coaching abilities of this staff if they're able to turn guys like Juleson, Desharnais, and Forbert into regular everyday defensemen? That would say amazing things. But until we see it, I'm going to ask to see it. And I don't
and understandably so. I hear what you're saying. Typically fan bases are err on the more optimistic side when talking about new additions. So I get the enthusiasm from the fan base and from those who are watching and listening in, as well as the skepticism on your end of things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here trying to say that Vincent Desharnais is a bona fide top four defenseman. No, I do believe in Tocchet and Foote and the coaching staff being able to get more out of players. I think we saw that on with a number of case studies last year. You mentioned Noah Juleson. We had a good discussion about him yesterday, turning into what was a bona fide NHL defenseman, playing more than half the season. You saw Besser and Garland improve. We've seen Dakota Joshua turn himself into a very good NHLer under this staff. So yeah, I would like to think that they can do something, if not with a lot of them, Blake, then maybe with one of them. And if I had to bet on which one, I would probably go Desharnais. All right, let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Elias Pettersson arrives at camp and meets the media, talking about the knee that gave him so much trouble in the second half of last season and into the playoffs. The knee, well, some would call it injury. Of course, Rick Tocchet called it tendonitis. The organization trying to make the point to Elias Pettersson that he is just going to have to push through some things this year to be the elite level player on a cup team that they hope he can be. Let's hear from Petey on how the knee is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how exactly to explain it, but it's like a nagging injury that, don't want to go away easily, but we figured out a way to work around it, and feel good. I don't feel any pain in it now or after, so it's not a big thing. The knee is fine.
Yeah, not a big thing's a good comment. Doesn't feel any pain before or after is good. That it's a nagging, and again, he's calling it an injury, and doesn't want to go away. That he had to work around it in the summer, and he mentioned conditioning and speed were two things that he was able to work on. My question on this, Blake, is how hard is he going to be on the puck? Because as we saw in the second half of last year, and particularly into the playoffs when the intensity ratchets up, he just was not strong enough on the puck, just not strong enough on his feet, even the shots, right? I remember you mentioned to me as we were watching, I think it was the Nashville series, but it could have been the Edmonton series, that he doesn't even look right shooting the puck. So how much stability does he have? And as Quadrelli brought up a great point, okay, the knee's good for now, but it doesn't sound like this is something that's going to improve as he plays on it. I suspect you'll see him limited in preseason.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I would think that the risk of this injury, without knowing it intimately, is explosiveness. I don't know how much you can replicate the desperation of, oh, that guy's getting away from me, and that extra 5% that you give to explode on a leg to catch up to somebody. I don't think you can really replicate that in training camp, in summer training, and even in preseason. It's different come the regular season. So we're going to know. The fact that it's not he can't feel it at all after a training session. I mean, that's certainly good news. I wonder what he means by nagging. Like, does he mean that after 5 days in a row of training, he feels it? Like, how often is it coming back to haunt him? Because if he's not feeling it after training camp, why would he even refer to it as nagging? How does he know it's still nagging? Like, he's clearly found a way throughout the course of the summer to make it flare up a little bit at times. So what are the circumstances around that? And I'm surprised in today's day and age of physiotherapy and stuff that they weren't able to nip this in the bud over almost 4 months of off season. Like,
Very fair.
It's that's tough to understand given he's got access to great care. So it's a little concerning.
And as has been a theme with the Canucks and the way they have messaged about this season, Rick Tocchet with Embrace the Hard and Patrick Allvin talking about how it only gets harder from here as you try and take the next step up as a hockey club. You know, it's kind of like in golf, right, Blake? Like, you know, the journey to break 100, not so. The journey to break 90, the journey to break 80, tough. And then the journey to break 70 is
harder and harder.
Oh, my God, torturous. So here we are with Elias Pettersson coming off his first real Stanley Cup playoff experience outside of the Edmonton bubble of a few years back. He's making $11.6 million now on the new contract. He does not have trade protection. He's not eligible this year. And from some lenses, that could mean this is a full year of evaluation for Rutherford, Allvin, Tocchet. Can we win a Stanley Cup with this guy being a frontline player? He was asked yesterday about how much he has to be better and said he knows that the team needs him to be better than when we saw him last. Take a listen.
I'm always my biggest critic, and I'm never going to shy away if I play good or bad. But I think just accepting that it wasn't my best hockey at the end of the year, but that's in the past. I'm just looking forward for what's ahead.
So I thought about that sentence when I heard this yesterday. I'm always my own worst critic or biggest critic. I'll give him credit in that he'll acknowledge when he plays poorly, but he just sort of wants to leave it at that and move right along. There's not typically anything further by way of explanation, and that's fair. I mean, he doesn't have to give explanation to the media and fans about why he's playing poorly. His dismissiveness of those questions, or his dismissiveness of anything beyond, I got to be better, is something I do wonder about. Like, I do wonder how much self-reflection there is there. I do wonder how much introspection there is there. And look, if last year, I think you made the point yesterday, Blake, if last year the contract status heaped pressure and was a distraction, boy, making $11.6 million and, of course, not having trade protection for one last season, I just wonder how he's going to react to those, to that set of circumstances.
Well, I see. I think there's two ways to interpret it. One is the one you just put forth. The other is he feels it too much, and there's too much introspection. I think we've all felt angry and sad where we'll acknowledge, I'm angry or sad, but I don't want to talk about it. And I feel like that's him after a lot of games. And I feel like the body language that we see is that he's stuck in his own head of telling himself that he's crap or that he's not on, and he can't get out of that, rather than acknowledging it, setting it to the side, and forging a new path. So sometimes I think he's almost too much in his own head.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think he's got to find, and this goes to the contract then too, you've got to find a way. Compartmentalization is not a healthy thing when it comes to our regular everyday lives, our performance in society. But sometimes at work, it's okay to just compartmentalize and say, okay, that was that. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to put that aside, though, and I'm going to do something new. And that goes for the contract as well. Okay, that was last year. Brand new clean slate this year. I've got a new path to forge. I know what I'm capable of. I'm worth this money, and you go out and get it, and you put a best foot forward. So there are ways to do it. You just got to get out of your own way sometimes, and I think you might be in it.
My whole life is compartmentalization, Blake.
I know.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. We all need therapy. I mean, it's true.
Is it Argentina that people just routinely go to therapy? Like there's no stigma there, that just it's part of life.
It's
I think
good.
so.
It's a good stigma to
knock down.
do away with.
So here's the thing. Patterson did not strike me yesterday as he sounded like that guy that we had at the end of last year. He said he was recharged, but there was nothing sprightly or joyful about his demeanor. And look, that doesn't necessarily matter with cameras and microphones and media sessions, but body language around the team matters. And so that is something that I think is going to be under the microscope. Tocchet has talked about body language in the past. So, we'll see where Elias is at on that front, particularly when the games start counting for real.
Yeah, and guys get blank checks sometimes when they come from another country and they're on the road. I think of, and we're going to get into Shohei Ohtani later on in hashtags on the pod. But like you see joy in a superstar like that, even though he might not even be able to have a conversation with the guy next to him in his own dressing room. But the joy of the sport and the brotherhood of the team, you can see it, and we did see that. We know it's in Patterson because in his ELC we saw it. And I can guarantee if he can find that again, Matt, he's a better player than 100 points.
How many times, honestly, outside of, in the seconds after a goal is scored, when, the team comes together for a huddle, how many times do you see him smile?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, David mentioned he was asked a personal question yesterday, and I do wonder whether, and we've had this conversation before, Blake, I do wonder whether this plays into it. He was asked a personal question. He mentioned that he used to like to post to social, but he doesn't do it anymore because he values his privacy. And look, that could just be a simple evolution that he grew out of social media to some regard, as a lot of 18 to 20 something, early 20s love to post everything,
back from society and all that. Yeah.
And dinner, here's what I'm having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, post it to Insta and all that. So it could just be that, a maturity and evolution, or it could be, NHL culture just beating the personality out of players, right? We have seen this before. Oh, not allowed to like video games. Like, oh, not allowed to be fashion forward. Like, all these different, things that don't seem to abide by NHL culture as NHL players see it, or NHL organizations see it. Like, oh, you want to interact with the fans? You don't want to be behind the velvet ropes and this, that, and the other thing. So, yeah,
he's a feeler though, Matt, and deep feelers. And this is not a criticism of deep feelers. I think I am one of them. Social media is hard. Like the feedback from every corner of society, it's hard to filter through, and so I don't begrudge the fact that he's just like it's not worth it for me. So okay. Yeah,
we'll see. Let's hear from Jake DeBrusk. I think we're going to hear a lot from Jake DeBrusk this year. He is a very good talker. If you're not familiar with the Canucks' big free agent addition from the Boston Bruins, much like his father Louis, who of course is in broadcasting out of Edmonton. He's got the gift of the gab. He's also willing to share a whole lot. He started on a line with Patterson. Of course, they went out and got him specifically to eliminate that excuse for Elias, right? Like, okay, it's not about your wingers anymore. We've gone and got you a bona fide NHL goal scorer. Jonathan Lekkerimäki playing the other wing, the Canucks' top prospect and goal-scoring winger. We certainly anticipate that he's going to be a goal-scoring winger in the National Hockey League at some point. Here's DeBrusk on the trio yesterday at camp.
I've been skating here for probably a week now, I guess, with the guys, and I've just been watching them play and trying to read off them as much as possible. And also, I can't pronounce his name, so I feel bad, but that kid on the right side is pretty damn good too. Yeah, he's got a great, wicked shot, so I'm excited to be a part of the line. I just want to do whatever I can to help it work.
Love it.
Yeah, so do I. And we'll hear from Tocchet here later. In fact, let's stay right here then, Mike. Let's have this Tocchet clip ready to go here in a second. Sorry about this. Our buddy Dave Hall from Canucksarmy tweeted, Tocchet said he was anxious to see Lekkerimäki alongside their top brass, and boy, did he fit in with Elias Pettersson and Jake DeBrusk. He finished on 75% of his looks throughout the skate. Easy now, it's only training camp drills, but he looked good
Dave Hall,
today.
get a life. Get a life, Dave Hall. Come on. We love Dave. He's looking at efficiency of line rushes in training camp.
Frankie Corrado picked up on Dave's tweet, sent it to us this morning by text, and went, look, if you got guys sitting there counting efficiency like finishes in line rushes at practice, Canucks media and Canucks Twitter is a whole nother level than anything we've ever
Put on
seen.
the crown. We the craziest. We've
Exactly.
officially
undefeated,
yes,
baby. So let's hear now, because it's not just Lekkerimäki with Patterson and DeBrusk. It's Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, EPD, who's getting some run with Filip Hronek. Not to mention Ratu and Sasson. We'll get to them here in a second. There was a lot of pretty good real estate given to young players that they think they have, that they believe have a future in the NHL. Let's hear from Coach Tocchet about putting these young players in positions to succeed.
Old school thought back in the day, as coaches are like, I know in my training, you got to earn your way up. I think it's a different world. I think it's important that they hang with the veteran guys, see what they're doing, how they're preparing before practice, and then watching their skill out there, and then catch, actually it's funny, I saw PD talking to him after our regroup drill, hey, go here, go there. I think that's invaluable. But I will switch around. I'm not saying he's going to get pulled out, but I think I got to put some other guys in other positions. I think it's important for these 5 days to get other guys acclimated.
You see the high end. You see what they're capable of,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're sticking him with the AHL guys and he's not doing well, then you're thinking, well, which is it, though? The fact that he doesn't have anything to work with, or that he's not playing well? If he's not doing anything with Elias Pettersson, it's probably on him. But if he is, then, he can rise to the occasion.
The other thing here, it is a position to succeed because all you have to do is play offense with the puck alongside two players who are pretty good with the puck. Right? Like the test is, how do you play defensively when you don't have the puck, particularly when you're out there against pretty good players? And of course, you don't have to deal with that in a training camp practice. So I love the way that Coach Tocchet structured that yesterday for a bunch of young players. I love the comments he made, and you have long said, Blake, I gotta give you credit. You were onto this early. He looks like an old school guy. There are certain things about him that are very old school, but he's a little bit new age as well. Like he strikes a really good balance between, for a 6-year-old guy too, in terms of understanding these 20-somethings, understand how coaching has had to evolve while continuing with some tenets of sort of old school coaching, or at least tried and true principles in terms of educating and getting
backdoor old school. You're not even noticing that you're being old school.
Sneaky old school.
Yes.
Fly old school. It's low key old school. Anyways, great job by Tocchet there. And I mentioned the plum real estate. Nils Oman skated with AHL players. Max Sasson and Ratu skated with National Hockey League players. I don't think that is wholly akin to EPD getting some run with Hronek, or Lekkerimäki getting some run with PD and DeBrusk, because I just don't see either of those scenarios taking place in the regular season off the hop. I could see a world where the Canucks go, hey, let's see if Sasson or Ratu can force their way onto the opening night roster ahead of Nils Oman, ahead of Archie Baines, ahead of Phil DiGiuseppe, because they're center icemen.
We've brought this up numerous times with many different examples, some of them Canuck examples. I think the best example of what I'm about to say is during the lockout of 04-05, where a bunch of NHLers went down to the AHL, went down to the ECHL, where there was still a lot of the ECHL and AHL talent around. I went and saw Scott Gomez, then the leading scorer in the second half of the 03-04 season, go play with the Alaska Aces. There's only so much, like his numbers were modest in the ECHL, and he was the leading scorer over the final 50 or 60 games in the previous year in the NHL. But there's only so much he could do. So there are players where that is the case. And that is often said, is that you think at a different level, and you're not a certified NHL player yet, but you think differently, and you don't necessarily have compatriots on your lines in the minors that can think offensively at the very least the way that you do. And it's a really good experiment. And Ratu's not blown the doors off in the American League. He is not. He's not demanded a call up via his American League play.
Nope.
But you do wonder now, as he's gotten older, a little bit wiser and a little bit more physically grown as well, is there a moment where that becomes true for him, where he just needs to play with NHL talent for his talent to be realized? And the answer might be no, that's not the case. But I think you owe it to yourself at this stage of his development to take a look-see at that, because he was an offensive player, Matt. That's what he's supposed to be.
No, of course.
Yeah.
And, hey, I've heard this about every position in the AHL, like goaltenders sometimes.
Yes.
Well, you got defensemen doing some stuff out there that NHL defensemen would not do, right? And so that changes the game for them. We've heard this with defense pairs. Frankie Corrado has mentioned this before. If you're with a defenseman at the HL level who just doesn't have NHL talent and ability or IQ, then, expect the unexpected. It is going to be difficult to look good as a pair when there's that level of volatility, unpredictability to what your partner's doing. We should mention that Teddy Blueger is back skating today. He is with the C group, but they really downplayed any kind of long-term concern on Blueger yesterday, said he's about a week away. So,
but it's important because as we talk about Ratu and center depth, they do need Blueger.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I didn't sense any concern that Blueger would miss the opener.
Right.
Discussing this drill, despite a lower body injury and a small procedure, he's more than on track if he's back skating with the full group, even if it's only the AHL group. Let's get to goaltending here. Where the Athletic and TSN's Pierre Lebrun has said he thinks Demko's about 4 weeks behind where he would typically be. I'm not sure there are a lot of Canucks that would have got posed a question about goaltending, but JT Miller's always up to talk, just about anything. Here's Miller on missing Demko and on the goaltending uncertainty.
I know, but we proved last year I don't think it matters who's in net. Obviously, we want our number one guy with us, but we have total faith in Artie that the way he played last year and came in and played unreal in that Nashville and Edmonton series. I mean, so that's out of our control. That's not something as a player you worry about. It shouldn't matter who's playing goalie.
The one good thing you could say about a Canucks season, if it were to begin without Thatcher Demko and with Arturs Silovs having to make the lion's share of starts, is that's how last season ended. And I don't disbelieve Miller for a second. Yeah, I think that room believes in Silovs because of what he showed in the postseason last year. Yeah. You're not like, this isn't a scenario where it's like, oh, we got a young guy, let's see how he does. That would have been, a step worse than what we're looking at. So, I do feel like the Canucks, so long as they maintain, and this will be a balancing act with Tocchet looking to score more goals, looking to generate more rush chances, but so long as they maintain their acute attention to defensive detail that we saw last year, because that was the number one thing, I think, in terms of what changed for the Vancouver Canucks from being a dysfunctional franchise with a whole lot of terrific players who put up points but didn't do a lot of winning, to last year when they were vying for a President's Trophy. It was the commitment to team defense. Every single player, including the good offensive players who you don't necessarily think of as defensive stalwarts, everybody bought in to what Tocchet, Foote, and the coaching staff were preaching last year about team defense. If they continue to maintain that, they can really help out Arturs Silovs. And then Miller's right. It's not a confidence issue in the group in terms of his ability. That should serve them well.
But I think somebody, and I'm sure they are on this, but I think you do have to remind Silovs, do some coaching there, whether it's Desharnais or Tocchet, reminding that, like, I don't think you needed to tell Arturs Silovs in the playoffs, this is big. Like, this means something tonight. Like, you just know, a Tuesday versus Anaheim in October, you might need to remind the kid, okay, all the same details, all the same things, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's a difference between postseason and regular season games, but to me, Blake, he is still so inexperienced relatively speaking, that I think every NHL game is still big for him.
You hope.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm not sure he's yet at the this is routine. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure he is. Again, he got a wake up call last year. The Canucks were not in love with the summer and the way he reported back last year. They went out and got Casey DeSmith, and guess what? He was down in the AHL, and he wasn't exactly even starring.
Hey, again,
in the NHL. So
as long as that training inflammation is actually gone now for good for him, I think it was actually a good thing to happen and a good sign in that he was taking it seriously. Like he was revved up to have a good year. So that's good.
So mentioning JT Miller, he was with Brock Besser. We knew that was going to happen. And Danton Heinen, and just about everybody concurs that if Tocchet, who, caution, don't read too much into everything that you see in the first couple of days of training camp. Fair enough, coach. But just about every observer of this team concurs that if there was something shown on the opening day of camp that we all believe is a very real possibility on opening night, it's Danton Heinen with JT Miller and Brock Besser on that line. If there was a second line or defense pairing that may have some opening night stickiness, well, it could very well be the defense pair of Carson Soucy and Vincent Desharnais. You anticipate that Carson Soucy will be the second pair left side defenseman after Quinn Hughes. And you anticipate that one of the so-called twin towers, either Vincent Desharnais or Tyler Myers, will be his defense partner. Desharnais, if you're not familiar with the story, he's just played 130 NHL games. He's in his late 20s, college guy, late bloomer. And because of his sort of circuitous road to the National Hockey League, he was asked about the defense slotting yesterday and the depth chart, and gave a fabulous answer. He ain't worried.
When you're a seventh rounder, when you play in the coast, you play in the AHL for 3-4 years, you don't really care who you play with. You just want to be here. You just want to make a difference. I think all 7-8 D-men that are here are great D-men. I think everyone can play in the top six. I'm not coming in as I got my spot here. I'm coming in to prove that I can play top six, and we'll go from there.
I think it's important. The bottom four guys, and we'll assume Juleson starts as the seventh guy in pencil. Of the four towers they've got, and we'll put Forbert into that group. Only Soucy and Myers are okay skaters. Neither one of them is a bullet. And Myers used to be a wonderful skater. It's coming back a little bit, but Soucy and Myers can get around. I think there are bigger questions about Forbert and Desharnais getting around.
Yeah, so, I mean, Desharnais moves well for a big guy, but I think the emphasis there is big guy.
Yeah,
right.
So I would split up Soucy and Myers if you can, to make sure you've got a little bit of mobility amongst those big gentlemen.
And then I think you've got another good scenario happening where Myers can be a little bit of a security blanket for Forbert, and that Soucy could be a little bit of a security blanket for big Desharnais. The other thing, the more I hear Desharnais talk, Blake, and the perspective that he brings to his answers, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Alex Burrows, right down to the French Canadian accent, right? Like when you've traveled the road that those guys have traveled to the NHL, there are some things about the way you approach life. There are things about the way you approach, answer questions and communicate. That's a little different than, a kid who was a first round pick, a major junior star, dipped the toe in the AHL and then arrived at the NHL and was living that luxurious life at age 20, right? These guys have traveled a harder road. These guys have had to prove more things to more people at every stop along the way. And I think he brings an incredible perspective here in the short time we've gotten to know Vincent Desharnais.
Just need a voice crack every once in a while, and then it'll be full Burrows.
Yeah, it wouldn't deterred. And the perspective that he's bringing to his new team, and to all of us who are on the other side and listening in on this man and hearing his story. Now, of course, he made headlines at the Jake Milford, participated in a Q&A that was hosted by Conor Garland. It was great fun. He was asked what he learned about JT Miller in the playoff series last year as a member of the Edmonton Oilers. And he quipped, well, I learned he was an asshole.
Yeah.
And of course, the room was riotous. And well, there was some aftermath to the comment. Take a listen to Desharnais on after he called JT an asshole.
Yeah, well, I kind of felt bad after. I'm like, well, he's a leader, and I just called him out. But then after everyone came to me and we were like, that was awesome. Like we all know how he is. And I was like, okay, good. I went to see him after. He was like, well, did you tell them that we had a couple waters last night to make up? I was like, well, I didn't know if I could say that, but no, he's obviously JT. I mean, I said that because there's a reason for it. You know, I think he's a great leader for this team, and I think you guys saw last year how intense he is, how skilled he is. And like I said, during practices today, I think he finishes his hits 3 times on me, and that's great. That's how you win. That's how you win games. You just build your practice habits. You just got to build them, and then in games it's going to be even harder.
Tried to get the answer back on the rails, right? To be a more formulaic NHL answer. Finished his hits on him. I love the waters part. Yeah.
Matt, what does that say about the growth of JT Miller?
Oh, for sure. Great point.
You know, like, remember the questions and worries that Canuck Nation had about, is this guy just too much of a loose cannon? Is he hated? Like, this guy.
Do you think anyone on the team 2 years ago would have had the stones to call him an asshole in a public setting?
Or they would have meant it. Like,
Yeah.
Right. That would be the alternate there. So just a marvelous, and hey.
What a way to endear yourself to your new teammates, right? Like, maybe I went too far there with a guy I don't really know all that much. And the group says, no. We thought it hilarious.
Yeah.
Good job.
And in a lot of ways, they thought it extra hilarious because of maybe the old JT Miller, who, he's a good asshole now as opposed to being the bad asshole,
Absolutely. There was something out of camp yesterday and out of Tocchet's mouth that Blake stopped me dead in my tracks. We talked about it earlier with Quadrelli. Noah Strang here of the Daily Hive, who was on yesterday's show with the tweet. I thought it was funny today when Tocchet said, Garza can play anywhere. He meshes with everyone. Remember when the narrative was Garland couldn't find chemistry with anyone? How quickly things change. Yeah, great tweet from Noah. Blake, this time last year, we were sitting here going, he's untradeable. He's asked for a trade request. And worse yet, he just hasn't found chemistry with anyone that the Canucks tried with him. He's such an unorthodox player. He zigs when others zag, blah, blah, blah. Can they salvage anything out of Conor Garland? And a year later, you got Tocchet saying he meshes with everyone and can play anywhere in the lineup. That is a 180 turn in terms of the way that Conor Garland is perceived as a winger.
And credit to Garland for that, and maybe credit to Tocchet too for finding a way to channel the whirling dervish energy that he has and making it maybe more playable alongside teammates. So, but good on both of them, because he's certainly found a way. Like I think you can pencil him. I don't think there's a question. I think he's a 50-point player minimum this year. And we were wondering sort of where he would fit in, how he'd get his points. Would he get his points? And I don't have much question about Conor Garland this year.
So let me ask you the same question I asked Quadrelli. Lekkerimäki will not be on right wing with Patterson and DeBrusk on opening night. We know that. Dakota Joshua may be available on opening night. We'll see. I mean, things sound like they're going well in his recovery from cancer surgery. And as cancer surgeries go, it is a generally pretty short recovery period. So I think there's still a lot of hope and optimism that Dakota Joshua will be ready for opening night. But if he isn't, and you don't have the Garland, Joshua, 2 flanks, whether it's Suter or Blueger in the middle, 2/3, that great third line from last year. And you're looking for a right shot with Patterson and DeBrusk, which Lekkerimäki is, and which the Canucks don't have a ton of. Could you see Garland with Patterson and DeBrusk on opening night? Could you see that being a thing all season long, particularly if you're talking minimum 50+ points for Conor Garland this year?
Yeah, if you're not tapping into the Joshua chemistry, because he's not there yet on opening night, and this was more for the guys like Travis Green and Willie, but coaches do like comfort food on opening night, guys that they're a little bit more predictable. And that can go away as early as game 2. But on opening night, when nerves are a possibility and all that sort of stuff, coaches and Tocchet's a different one. He might zig when you expect the zag. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit more predictable and just a little bit more easy, I think, for Tocchet to put him there and expect to know what he's going to get out of him. So rather than a new guy, can I see it? Yeah, I could see that.
All right, let's get to today's menu, and it's brought to you by our friends at Greta Bar. Hockey season right around the corner, but even before it gets going, there's still plenty going on at Greta. Baseball, football, soccer. And once hockey season gets going, Greta, great spot for all games, home and away. We'll be there for Canucksarmy viewing parties throughout the season. Details on that coming soon. Minutes from the arena. Stop by pregame, after the game. Check out the great street food menu. Let me recommend the beef brisket quesadilla tacos. We had them a couple of times last year as we were watching games in the playoffs. Absolutely delicious. And then of the handheld sandwiches, boy, the smash burger there is outstanding. Check out the arcade. We all know it's an extraordinary arcade. Air hockey, Donkey Kong, and others. Weekly drink specials. Greta, the place to be. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. Well, we've already had Quadrelli on the show. J-Pat's going to join us coming up. Podcast side here next will be hashtags. YouTube side will be Jeff. And big scrimmage on Sunday. Jeff will be back with us on Monday. Plus, of course, huge game for the Whitecaps against LA Galaxy on Saturday. We'll have more on that. Lions back home next week as well against Hamilton. So plenty of happenings in the world of sports. Let's do our Bet365 bets of the day. This segment proudly brought to you by our friends at Bet365. Blake, where are you going?
Wanted to take a peek at the Whitecaps, of course, as they go into this huge match with Galaxy and what the possibilities are on that menu. And given the fact that they still don't have Stuart Armstrong into the starting lineup, given the fact that we did see Brian White get on the board already in a bench role on Wednesday, you get the feeling he's good to go for 90 minutes and probably good for another goal. He's feeling good about his game.
Wow.
Plus 200 on an anytime goal from Brian White tomorrow.
And just before I offer mine, have we ever had a Bet365 bets of the day that went down as easy peasy as last night, where we're both on the same game and where it is pretty clear early on we're both going to hit with the Jets covering 6 points and Jacoby Brissett? What was it, under passing yards for you?
Yeah.
Yesterday? Wow. I almost felt like stealing yesterday. That was so easy.
Yeah.
I'm going NCAA football. Georgia Tech got that season opening upset over Florida State. Now, Florida State hasn't won a game yet, and so people are downgrading that win by Georgia Tech. That's reflected in the line here. But they're 3-1, and they face a ranked Louisville team that has played absolutely nobody yet, like two absolute patsies that they destroyed. You're getting 10.5 points with a Yellow Jackets team that's a little more seasoned in terms of level of competition already this year. That's too much. Give me Georgia Tech plus 10.5 to cover at Louisville Saturday. Open an account today with Bet365 and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, use code VANBONUS when opening that account.
Matt, before we send it to our first guest, we should mention that all those guys are up in Penticton. They're going to be drinking at Neighborhood Brewery, I'm sure, stopping by. The Bluish Blue Hawaiian IPA is on tap.
I cannot believe how popular that was, because I look at it and I see something blue.
It is blue.
And I look at it and, like, to me it looks to me it looks like something in the Slurpee slushy range. And yet Jacob Lazar, our producer who was with us last weekend, and so many others around our table had the bluish blue Hawaii.
Yeah, Bluish Blue Hawaiian IPA. It's a take on the Blue Hawaiian cocktail, but if it's nice out still, and we still got a little bit of niceness in the weather, very refreshing. Check it out from Neighborhood Brewing.
J-Pack coming up next.
Normally when we talk about Greta Bar YVR, we're telling you to make it a game night at Greta, and we're talking about hockey. Of course, we're not quite yet at hockey season, but game night can mean whatever it means. And that could mean soccer or football game to watch on the screen, or your own games, because the arcade is half the fun at Greta Bar YVR. Make it your game night at 50 West Cordova. And of course, great food and drink specials. And you can also make it a late game night, as they're open late every single night. So make it a late game night, your game night at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova.
Some price from the historic Wall Center. Jeff Patterson, Canucks reporter, and of course the host of Rinkwide, joins us from the South Okanagan Event Center in Penticton, British Columbia, on Vancouver Canucks training camp day 2. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good. It's a big day here in Penticton. Not only are the Canucks in town, but it is the regular season opener for the mighty Penticton Vs. And, of course, they're on the road because the Canucks have taken over the South Okanagan Event Center. So now with the new look BC Hockey League, the Vs' first game in Spruce Grove, Alberta. The home opener will be on October the 4th.
We heard of that when we were there last weekend. A lot of excitement for those 4 AJHL teams joining the BCHL, and I hope they're on their P's and Q's when they play the V's, because if not, as we know, there can be some lopsided scores there at the SOEC. Jeff, Group B has taken to the ice there. That is, for lack of a better term, the JT Miller Brock Besser group. And let's start with that line, because so many of us wondered, is Danton Heinen going to be the third wheel on that line? He was there yesterday. He was there again today. And of everything that Rick Tocchet and his staff have put together, that looks like the one that has the most stickiness when it comes to the regular season opener.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Danton Heinen is a veteran, a guy that's seen the ups and downs of the National Hockey League. Looked like maybe he had played his way out of the NHL a couple of years ago, had to go to camp on a PTO, and he's one of those guys that earned a job. And yet 2 of the last 3 years, he's been in the mid-teens in goals. This is a guy that has speed. I think that's one of the things that they like about the contributions he can make to this line with Besser and Miller. We know that Brock's not a burner, but JT can keep up, certainly. But Danton Heinen has a defensive awareness and a conscience that if they are going to use that line in a checking capacity and a shutdown matchup role, and certainly wherever JT Miller goes now, it feels like that duty follows him, then Danton Heinen, I think, can be a pretty good fit there. That, you know, you've got Besser in his 40 goals. I don't know that he's going to get back to 40, but certainly he's going to be expected to be one of the goal-scoring leaders. I don't know that you're putting a ton of importance and pressure on Heinen. You want him to finish if the puck comes his way and he's in scoring positions, but I think it's more about off the puck, away from the puck, his speed and his ability to recover and those types of things. And just the fact that now at this stage of his career, sounds solid veteran that understands the assignment. So great opportunity for him. And yeah, it wasn't just a one-day look on day one. He is back and in that position. And so connecting the dots here, as much as Rick Tocchet has implored us not to read into things, I think it's safe to read into something there with Danton Heinen getting that opportunity.
You wonder if Rick Tocchett's going to put a disruptor, if you will, on every line, even on the top 2 skilled lines, that he wants somebody as a puck retrieval guy. And it might not be exclusive. Like DeBrusk can be that to some degree as well. But I do wonder if even away from DeBrusk on the second line, the same combo will be in effect, where they want somebody to go in there and disrupt that maybe doesn't have the pressure to score, like you just talked about for Heinen.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we heard Rick Tocchet talk about stickiness, right? Mm-hmm. Getting in and getting on the forecheck, and disruptive is a good term as well. And certainly Kiefer Sherwood's going to bring that wherever he ultimately slots in. And they've got Sherwood on the line with PDG and Max Sasson getting a good opportunity to skate with 2 guys that have been NHLers now for a while. And that was one of the things that jumped out at me on day one, guys, was that, the Canucks have this idea of what they've got at the top of their lineup, but certainly center ice without Elias Lindholm, there are some questions about how deep they are down the middle. And to put a guy like Max Sasson, who, had a fine showing at Young Stars, as you'd expect, given his pedigree and his experience, but they put him with a couple of NHLers on day one and again here on day 2. And a guy like Neil Zaman was skating with Sammy Blais, who's here on a PTO, but, he had basically AHLers on his line. So, again, Tocchet doesn't want people to read too much into it, but it is just interesting to note sort of how the deployment has shaken down here through 2 days of camp so far, and the opportunities that some guys are getting. Archdeep Baines playing with Pius Suter and Daniel Sprong. Great opportunity for Archdeep Baines. I'm not expecting that he's going to open the season, in that spot. I don't think that he's going to make the team out of camp. But again, with injuries, whether it's Dakota Joshua, it's good to see Teddy Blueger. That was sort of some of the news of the morning, at least, was that Teddy Blueger, who wasn't really supposed to participate in camp, in a non-contact jersey, but out with the C group, which is made up primarily of American Hockey Leaguers and some junior guys as well. But just good to see Teddy Blueger back on skates and an active participant at a camp like this one at the very least.
Daniel Sprong's a total wild card. Like, who knows what you get out of Daniel Sprong? But there is we looked at Group B before they took to the ice yesterday. We sort of thought, gosh, does he get that treatment right away as a skilled player to play along? And it looks like he's gonna have to work for it. Like, I don't know exactly if that's just through these skates or if it's going to be a bottom six assignment in a preseason game. But it looks like he's gonna have to work his way into the top six.
Yeah, and I think, versatility is something that he brings to the mix here. I mean, there are still questions about his defensive game and his play away from the puck, but put a puck on his stick in a shooting position. And look, guys, you've been around camps as well. Like, these are the best of the best. I mean, it's a variety, obviously, from young players, but at the top of the lineup, these are elite level hockey players. They can all shoot the puck, but there is some pop. Like, there was something a little bit different just in the release of Daniel Sprong and his shot here. Something I wanted to look at day one. Now, was he shooting on high-end NHL goaltenders? No. And you do have to keep that. I think context matters here. But just in terms of the way he gets the puck off his stick, you can see why he has been a successful goal scorer in the National Hockey League to this point. And certainly the Canucks are hoping that he does more of that this year. But you're right. How many opportunities will he get to unleash that shot? What kind of role will he be playing? Who will he be playing with? All of that is going to be determined here. And so, yeah, it kind of feels like maybe that is some of the message to him, that we're not putting you with Elias Pettersson right off the hop. You may wind up there. You may get some preseason games there. But at least to start the first couple of days of camp, you're going to have to earn your place. And so we'll see where it goes from here for Daniel Sprong. But, came sort of as advertised when he was in those shooting positions. Didn't waste his opportunities yesterday on day number one.
Let's go back to yesterday for a moment, Jeff, just because big story, big player for the Vancouver Canucks. What did you make of Elias Pettersson's media session yesterday?
Yeah, I didn't think there was a whole lot to take away. I mean, tried to sell us all on the fact that the knee isn't bothering him, and yet apparently there is still some tendonitis there. It didn't magically disappear over the summer months. He understands that the stakes go up from here, that he's such an important part of this hockey club. He owned the fact that he didn't play his best hockey down the stretch. Still had an 89-point season. There were moments, the first half of the season, the month of January, he was terrific. But why it went sideways for him over those final couple of months, I mean, I hope he did some soul searching in the summer and in the offseason. He didn't really get into all of that other than to acknowledge that, look, he knows. He's making close to $12 million now, the highest paid player on the team. He recognizes that comes with a different set of pressures. There's always been pressure on him, just because of the role that he plays and the success that he's had. But all of that gets ratcheted up, certainly in a market like this one. He tried to downplay a fair bit of that. So there wasn't a ton. I mean, he stood in there, he answered the questions, but it didn't look like he was all that excited to see us after all the months away. That wasn't one of my takeaways, quite frankly.
No.
And that's fine. He doesn't need to be our best friend. It is more about what he does on the ice. And, it was kind of interesting to see. No surprise with DeBrusk right away, but the fact that they put Jonathan Lekkerimäki there on day one and again here on day two, great opportunity for the kid. Look, Elias Pettersson is going to be judged on what he does starting on October the 9th. It would be great to see him dominate camp in the preseason. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he better be ready to come firing out of the gates when the puck drops on the 9th of October against the Calgary Flames.
Blake and I were talking on the show yesterday how we'd love to see him get back to being that kid from his rookie year, his second year, had such joy and enthusiasm. He said he was recharged yesterday. He didn't sound very recharged. He sort of sounded like the guy from the second half of last season. But let's stick with the line combination you mentioned. And Jeff, as we predicted on Tuesday, don't be surprised to see Lekkerimäki get a plum assignment on one of the top two lines. That's a lovely little carrot that the coaching staff can dangle in front of a top prospect. But it went deeper than that. My friend, you mentioned Archie Bains already getting some billing, and EPD, Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, with Philip Hronek. So it looked like, and we played the clip earlier, Tocchet wanting to give these young players sniffs and opportunities to succeed. And I suspect we might see some of that in the preseason games. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would think so. Like, I don't think the Canucks are going to reduce numbers. Camp is so quick, and they need 2 squads here on Sunday for the scrimmage game. I thought it was interesting, too. I asked Rick Tocchet any chance of any scrimmages before Sunday's scheduled scrimmage, and he said no, that he's not a big fan nor a believer in game simulation at training camp. He's more about digging into systems and structure and drilling down and teaching and all that kind of stuff, and doesn't want to waste any moments on the ice. So they will play in 2 teams and a organized scrimmage, and we know that they're charging $32 a head. So I would assume that the star players here at camp are going to be in the lineup on Sunday. The other thing to remember, guys, is next week is wild. The Canucks have 5 games in 7 nights. Like, you never see that. That's just, it's not allowed in the regular season, but 5 games in 7 nights. So in terms of cuts and when they're going to reduce numbers and all those types of things, I think they might carry a bigger roster for a while into the second week of the preseason. But just get back to your question about, deployment. Yeah. Talked, as you said, at length about putting players in a position to succeed. And certainly Lekkerimäki and EP, the defenseman, are 2 of the prize prospects that they've got here. So I kind of like that. Tocchett's got vast experience as a player and now as a coach, and said, hey, back in my playing days, a lot of those rookies, like, hey, you go out there and earn it. But, he said this isn't necessarily preferential treatment. It's just putting guys in a position to succeed. Now, the other part of that equation, Matt, is that we wondered, and I think a lot of us thought that they would split Hughes and Hronek here at camp at the very least. They know what they've got. They can go back to that. I have a hunch that they will go back to that, but why not here at a training camp at the very least, sort of spread the wealth, give guys opportunities to play with other players higher in the lineup. And look, Noah Juulsen on day 1 and 2 here, the caddy for Quinn Hughes, been there and done that. We've seen that. You know what you've got in Noah Juulsen, a loyal soldier to this group and organization, but I certainly don't think that is experimental in terms of a long look and a long leash for Noah Juulsen getting a chance when they get down to numbers to be the guy that's playing on the right side alongside of Quinn Hughes.
Fair enough. Sticking with defense, if Miller with Besser and Heinen might be the stickiest line combination in terms of to be together on opening night, does Carson Soucy with Vincent Desharnais have a chance to be a defense pair on opening night? They were together at camp yesterday, Jeff.
They were, and they're out here on the ice as we conduct this interview. We know Rick Tocchet likes his big defenseman, and if it's not Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers, then, hey, Vinny Desharnais is a pretty good fill-in and stand-in for Tyler Myers. And it was funny when the Canucks signed Desharnais on July the 1st, and he conducted his Zoom then. And this is a big player and a big personality, and we saw that again yesterday. On the Zoom on July 1st, he wasn't convinced that Tyler Myers was taller than him. And he said it was one of the things at camp that he wanted to he'd played against him, obviously. That was the evidence he was going off. He didn't believe that Tyler, he didn't want to give the inch that he copped to it yesterday.
Yeah.
He came out, he kind of shook his head. He said, I got to admit, Myers is taller than I am, but he's still a tall man. 6'7", I think, is how Vincent Desharnais goes, or 6'6.5", certainly. So you've got Desharnais on one side and Soucy on the other. Again, the wingspan, the reach, that disruptiveness, using their sticks effectively, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, as much as, again, Tocchet doesn't want us to read into things, I think that is a pairing that you would have to take a long look at and think, hey, legitimately. Now, we don't know ultimately where Tyler Myers is going to fall into all of this and if they are going to split Hughes and Hronek. But, yeah, I mean, I think you've got 2 guys there that could find themselves playing together either by choice of the coaching staff or, look, injuries happen, guys get thrown together during a season. So, yeah, not out of the realm of possibility that you could have the sort of twin towers back there, but this time Carson Soucy on the left side and Vincent Desharnais over on the right.
I think I might be taller than Matt. I think Matt's shrinking at a higher rate than I am right now, so I think That's
probably fair.
I think I might catch up a little bit.
It's posture, Blake. It's a little more rounded. I love this. Like, let's go back to back in the schoolyard, huh?
Yeah, totally. We were talking about the willingness to tinker into October. We all know that a start is important. Especially if the goaltending is a coin toss as to who they've got in net and all that sort of stuff. And no one's doubting that you don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball in October. But do they owe themselves the opportunity to see what they've got with live bullets rather than just in the preseason? How much do you think they're going to be willing to take some of this experimentation into October?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned goaltending, and it is the great equalizer. Obviously, when you've got it, you know it, and when you don't have it, you know it. And as open as Thatcher Demko tried to be with us, there is still a lot of uncertainty around his readiness, his timeline, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I think some of that is they just don't know at this stage, given the sort of rare or strange nature of this injury. So, look, Arturs Silovs was a terrific story in the playoffs. It almost felt to me like he got thrown in there and didn't have time to process how high the stakes were. But if you go back to Abbotsford last year, like it was a middling season in the American Hockey League for Arturs Silovs. In fact, I think Nikita Tolopilo started to take starts away from Arturs Silovs at some point. It was sort of feast or famine because Silovs had 15 wins and 4 of them were by shutouts at the American Hockey League level. So look, the Canucks believe in Silovs. I think what they really believe in is their system. And JT Miller talked a little bit about that. He was asked about goaltending and said, hey, as players, we can't worry about who's behind us. They think that they've got a system and a structure in place that's going to allow whoever's in goal to get the job done. But I guess I asked the question, like, how far have they come as an organization? Because under Bruce Boudreau and with Spencer Martin, that just didn't add up, right? Like, Spencer Martin probably would have been an okay backup, but the minute that Demko went down on that December 1st and they needed Spencer Martin to be the guy, like the dynamic changes at this level. And Spencer Martin just wasn't up to the challenge of playing behind a defense the way that Bruce Boudreau had them playing. And we know that season went sideways. So Rick Tocchet's here, Adam Foote's here. The system and the structure are better. I mean, that should help whoever's in goal, but ultimately you do need to make some saves, because if you're not getting the saves, like how many times have we seen that where a team, the goalie gives up an early one or maybe a couple, and all of a sudden you're behind the 8 ball. And it changes the dynamic, the team, the body language on the bench, this understanding that, now we've got to go out and we've got to score a whole bunch. But to do that, maybe you're cheating, and then you're really exposing the goalie at the back end. So I think that there's probably some room for experimentation, but it is the NHL. We saw last year they got off to a hot start, and they were able to ride that ultimately to a division title. And we also saw what happened on the other side of the mountains with the Edmonton Oilers getting off to the terrible start that they did, and then just having to play like bats out of hell for, the final 45 or 50 games, and it cost a coach's job and all that kind of stuff. So there isn't a ton of wriggle room at this level once you start playing for keeps. But, if they get enough goaltending, then maybe that does give the coaching staff some latitude to experiment just a little bit. Because, look, I think it's pretty clear they're not going to have Thatcher Demko, and so it is a question of ultimately who are going to be their 2 goaltenders to start the season. And, is one of them even here in camp, right? Like, I mean, we don't know what they're going to do roster-wise ahead of October the 9th.
Would a good preseason from a goaltender give you faith to start the season? Would to give them faith, do you think? Like, if Silovs allows 1 goal in two appearances or something like, do you feel good about yourself then?
Look, I think they're high on Arturs Silovs. I mean, he's done everything they've asked of him, and the playoff performance and even his world championship experience, like as a young guy, as a 6th-round pick back in 2019, like he has outkicked his coverage to this point. But there are still flaws in his game, and we saw that. He had some trouble tracking pucks and the long shots, looking the wrong way around bodies and those types of things. Look, the book gets out on players around the National Hockey League, so heavily scouted. There's nowhere to hide at this level. So I think they believe in Arturs Silovs. Still don't know what his ceiling is ultimately. Nikita Tolopilo, to me, seems like the wild card in this mix. That I know Jiri Patera has played in the NHL, but it's 8 games. Like, I just don't think that gap between a guy that was a tweener in the Vegas system and Tolopilo, who looks the part but hasn't had that opportunity yet at the National Hockey League level. Tolopilo's only a year older than Arturs Silovs. So, like, I do wonder how much of this really is a legitimate race for spots and a true open competition for jobs on that opening night roster. Like, if Nikita Tolopilo turns out to be the best goaltender that they've got here at camp and through the preseason, can he close that gap on Jiri Patera and earn one of the roster spots to start this season? I think that's a valid.
Right, we're giving a lot of power to those 8 games. We're giving a lot of power to those 8 games.
Yeah. So brings me to a poll question. Goaltending, defense, Jeff. What's a bigger concern for you at this stage?
Oh, I think goaltending even though it's great to see Thatcher Demko back on the ice and he seemed to be in a really good headspace given all that he's been through, to me, and look, I am not a goaltender expert. I am not a goaltending evaluator, but having been around the game, he looked like he was going around 70% in the warm-up activity that he's done here the last couple of days, dropping to his knees, facing some shots from goalie coaches. He's not facing NHL shooters yet. There hasn't been any of the scramble and jam plays in his crease and those types of things. Like, that's where the progression has to come for him. So I would peg it in sort of that 65 to 70%. Gives you an idea of how much ground he still has to cover. I don't think there's enough time between now and the start of the regular season. So I do think the Canucks are going to go into the season without their ace in goal. And then it's just a question of when can he get back? But also, guys, I think the conversation has to shift from can he get healthy to can he stay healthy, right? Like, I just think at this stage of his injury history, he can get back there. I think he will get back in the lineup, but for how long? Can he stay healthy and continue to deliver that kind of goaltending for the Vancouver Canucks?
Last question here, Jeff. You mentioned Sasson and Ratu skating with NHLers and Oman skating with AHLers. Now, Blueger coming back probably cuts this off at the pass in terms of anyone lineup wise for night one. But does the plum assignment for Ratu and Sasson, is that very much in line with the, let's give Lekkerimäki, EPD some sugar, play them with better players? Or do you think they'd actually like Ratu or Sasson to leapfrog Oman and perhaps even be the 13th forward coming out of camp in preseason?
Yeah, if one of those guys was a right-handed shot, I think it would really be a separator. Yep. But again, the centers they've got, it's incredible that they're all lefties. And so, yes, I do think Nils Aman has shown. They got 113 games at the NHL level out of this guy. It's been a win in terms of a scratch and win ticket from a couple of years ago, but just because that's happened doesn't guarantee and cement his spot here moving forward. So if they had a guy that could leapfrog a player like that, I've said to you guys many times, you can't just put the uniform on. Like, it's not enough. What do you do around here? How do you help this team get better? And Nils Aman has some penalty killing utility. He's got size, certainly, but I'd like to see a little bit more of a bottom line from a player like that when he gets in there and gets his opportunities. And so, can Ratu jump on that and make the most of his chance here? I think Sasson's a little bit of a longer shot, but I do think that people in the organization are high on this guy. I think he'll play games for the Vancouver Canucks at some point. I'm not so sure about him breaking camp with the big league team, but we'll see where it goes. But yeah, look, nothing is done by chance here. There is a rhyme and a reason to every decision that is made in terms of who's playing with whom and who's skating where, even in these groups here. It'll be interesting to see if they stick with these sort of teams and groups as they get to Sunday's scrimmage, or if they want to put some guys in different positions once they do get to the one look at game action that they're going to have here on Sunday afternoon.
Exceptional work, Jeff. Thank you for this. Have a great weekend in Penticton. We'll be following along your coverage. Canucksarmy is doing a live blog day by day there, so check that out, and we'll catch up on Monday.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Retriever Golden Ale.
Some Price from the Historic Wall Center, and you can email us live at sekeresandprice.com, text 778-402-9680. So the Caps coming off that tie in Houston into LA, Blake.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to let us know what's up. What's up?
I was a little more
lineup wise. What's going on?
I was more optimistic 24 hours ago than I am now that they would get close to a best 11 sort of thing at some point in the match. And they are officially listing Ali Ahmed and Andres Kubas as questionable for the match. And I'm just getting bad vibes on both of them. So yeah, I don't get your hopes up that they're certainly in the starting lineup. I don't know that I'm entirely hopeful they are even on the bench. As for Stuart Armstrong, they're trying to extend him. They're trying to, stretch him out a little bit. I'd say at least a half hour out of Armstrong, if not maybe a second half entry for him at 45. So that's positive, but it's too bad that they don't have they don't have Kubas and Ali ready for certainly a start, or maybe even at all. And they're going to need all hands on deck. So that's going to mean a special performance. If Vitae goes back into Kubas's spot as the number 6 or Seb Berhalter, then they're going to have to be special against an LAFC team.
Yeah, because as we know, it is not easy to Galaxy, not FC.
Yeah, sorry, pardon me.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. LA had me confused.
The first place team. Pick your poison when it comes to Los Angeles. But yes, yeah. And you know what? LAFC, they've had some heroic performances against FC. The Galaxy don't seem to be as much of a bugaboo for them. But I mean, they're the first place team. Like, what do
you have some definitive rooting interest here if you're the Caps. Colorado hosts TFC. So, much as you may want to plug your nose, root for TFC in that one to keep Colorado down. You're rooting for Dallas, who hosts LAFC. You're rooting for Austin, who hosts the Houston Dynamo. And was there one more I circled? No, that's it. In terms of your out-of-town scoreboard. That's on Sorry. That's on Saturday.
Yeah.
Sunday, there's a match, but it doesn't affect the Caps in the West.
Scoreboard watching is in full effect. The last couple of years, remember, we've had these like almost perfect weekends for the Whitecaps.
These immaculate weekends where they win and everyone in their orbit somehow loses. Like in some cases, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was one weekend where like nobody around them even got a point.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So
we're back in those scenarios now. Different scenarios. Different in terms of, for those weeks, they were often to make the playoffs. Now it's about getting into the top 4.
Right.
But it's nice to.
And, we mentioned TFC in Colorado face the Rapids, rooting for TFC because they could do Vancouver a solid before they come here to serve as the Canadian Championship opposition on Wednesday at BC Place.
And they're desperate. They're in a playoff spot right now, but they could actually avoid the wild card around TFC and jump into a real playoff spot if they have a little bit of a hot finish. So they've got something to play for. So, hey, if they empty the chambers and use everybody and they're exhausted for September the 25th, 7 p.m. kickoff at BC Place, then that just works for the Whitecaps, of course, as they look to three-peat and win the Voyageurs Cup once more, taking on TFC. They beat them in that great shootout back in 2022. And with the win, the Caps can book their spot into the 2025 CONCACAF Champions Cup as well. There's free T-shirts for the first 10,000 fans and 50% off all beverages until kickoff. So get there early. Also, Whitecaps hosting a Toronto FC merch exchange for free tickets. So if you've ever been a TFC fan, but maybe you're an expat, you now live in Vancouver, take it into the Caps team store on September 20th and 21st. You'll get free tickets. Caps and TFC in the Canadian Championship Wednesday, the 25th. Atmosphere at BC Place should be out of sight. Get your tickets and more info at whitecapsfc.com.
Congratulations to 3 Vancouver Canadians, including the skipper, Brent Lavalley from North Delta, British Columbia. He is the Northwest League Manager of the Year. He has a club record 212 regular season victories. He has led the Seas to 3 consecutive playoff performances, and he's the first Seas manager to win this honor since Rich Miller in 2017. Also, congratulations to Peyton Williams, first baseman, and catcher Jackson Horning, both of them named to the Northwest League All-Star team yesterday. And the Vancouver Canadians want to thank Seas fans for another great summer and season at the Nat. If you're looking to guarantee your seat for all the action in 2025, please visit CanadiansBaseball.com or call 604-872-5232. Seahawks with a chance to go to 3-0, facing a beat-up Miami Dolphins team. Tua Tagovailoa, of course, on IR, so he is going to miss this game. The Dolphins going with backup quarterback Skylar Thompson. We also learned from Mike McDaniel today, the Dolphins coach, that running back Raheem Mostert is likely to miss this game. Their left tackle, Teron Armstead, is going to play by the sounds of it. And all of that sounds great for a Seahawks team that could go 3-0, except they might be more banged up than the Dolphins.
Oh.
9 starters missed some or all of practice. Nwosu, the edge rusher, Jaron Reed at nose tackle, Kenneth Walker, the running back, Jerome Baker, the linebacker, George Fant, the offensive tackle, Noah Fant, the tight end, Tyler Lockett, the receiver, Leonard Williams, who was terrific last week, and Devon Witherspoon. Doesn't sound like Walker's going to play. Looks like it's going to have to be Zach Charbonnet again at running back for the Seahawks. So already 2 weeks into the NFL season, Blake, and you look at these massive injury reports.
I know 3-0 doesn't guarantee you anything, but
no,
I mean, if you can steal one here against the Dolphins, I mean, you would have, you get an easy part of the schedule and you expect to tick a few guys off the list there, but I think you would have circled this one as a possible loss, even this one's at home, right? So you would have probably circled this one as a tough win if the Dolphins come in healthy. So if all of a sudden it turns into I won't say it's going to be an easy win, but if it turns into a win because the starting quarterback is missing, I don't think you apologize for that because you've stolen what would have been a tough game. So
sure,
that would put them in pretty good stead, and especially with the division in flux right now. So
want to thank Howard and Fleur over at Harbor Publishing. Our copies of Ed Willis's new book, Never Boring. The up and down history of the Vancouver Canucks arrived this week. It's funny. We had Eddie on Tuesday. He says to me on Wednesday, where can I send you books? I give him the address. By midday Thursday, they had arrived, Blake. So very quick work there. Thank you, Harbor Publishing, Howard Fleur, and the team there for getting us this book that really looking forward to digging into.
We should probably update the other local team. We used to have another team in Vancouver, Matt.
Right.
And for one game only this season, they will be back, or at least represented. Honestly, a lot of people wax poetic about the Vancouver Grizzlies. I'm not usually one of the, not because I didn't love them. I was a diehard Grizzly fan, but I kind of put up walls around my emotions on the Grizzlies for a lot of years. This one kind of hurt to see it actually being worn. The Memphis Grizzlies on opening night are wearing the Vancouver Grizzlies jerseys.
And they're going to say Vancouver?
It's going to say Vancouver.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Like they've been using the logo, but of course with Memphis written on it,
right.
It's going to say us.
I'm actually really surprised that they're doing that. I think you're just going to confuse a lot of Memphians.
Is that
especially the younger
That's not
one.
the word, is it?
Yeah, of course it is. Especially the young.
Memphians?
I'm going to look it up now, but I believe so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Memphians. Okay.
At least Memphis is actually a name taken from an Egyptian city. And that's what the Egyptian city calls its residents. I would have to think that the Tennessee folks fall in line there. I mean, it's part of the franchise history. It's available to you. You know, we have seen this in the past with other teams, you know.
Yeah. Although, have the OKC Thunder ever worn Sonic stuff? I don't think so.
I don't know.
Different name. So I guess it's a little bit more weird there. Anyway, if you are a Grizzlies fan or a nostalgia fan, they
look away.
Their team store is replete with Vancouver Grizzlies gear again. So
how about that?
Yeah.
Poll question results from Thursday. We asked you, will you worry about Thatcher Demko's health all season? We all know they voted yes, Blake. What percentage voted yes?
85.
83. Very good. Ellie says, I have for the past 3 seasons. And then Yerky says, anyone who says no are the same type of fans who call the media negative for reporting on things like the team has lost a 3rd consecutive game or the other team just scored. Speaking of Yerky, he points out that you misspoke and called Jeremy Swayman Kevin.
I think I did
yesterday.
Yeah, I had
as we go on
on the brain.
Errors and omissions. Also, our show tweet yesterday for the live show listed Rob the Hockey Guy as a guest, not Noah Strang. Old habits die hard. Rob the Hockey Guy normally joins us on Thursdays. We went to his understudy, Noah. who was there on the spot reporting from training camp and did a fantastic job. We'll have Rob back, and we'll have Noah back after yesterday's hit.
I think Rob was busy writing his dissertation on the Larshiders being on the outside looking in. My goodness.
I thought Shorter was better at the Daily Hive. How long did he go on this?
Oh, TLDR, honestly. It was,
yeah. Is it
Very
like,
long.
this big, like this thick? Should he have written the book
Yes.
on the Larshiders? Rob Williams. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending time connecting with the show. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's Twitter, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Live 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Many of those platforms, and of course, support the community sponsors that we're telling you about. Keep it local. Hey, everybody! If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.